Have you ever stopped to think about how the war in Ukraine shook the entire world? While battles rage on the front lines, a very different kind of war was unfolding behind the scenes, the energy crisis. And at the center of this storm, Germany, one of the world's greatest powers, found itself at a crossroads no one could have predicted. Before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Germany was seen as a model of efficiency and economic stability. But beneath this strength lay a dependency that now seems almost unthinkable. More than half of the natural gas used in the country came directly from Russia. This partnership was so crucial that many believed it would remain unshaken, even in times of crisis. But no one foresaw the impact of a war. Russian gas was essential to keeping Germany's powerful industry running and heating millions of homes during Europe's harsh winters. It was a relationship that benefited both sides. Russia used the revenue to strengthen its economy and fund its geopolitical ambitions, while Germany secured a cheap and reliable energy supply. But everything began to fall apart when Russian troops crossed the Ukrainian border. Suddenly, Germany was forced to choose between maintaining its energy dependence on Russia or joining the West in pressuring Moscow with sanctions. This choice brought a series of problems, from skyrocketing energy costs to the threat of an economic crisis. Meanwhile, the world turned its attention to the relationship between these two giants, which shifted from interdependence to a power struggle that would reshape the global stage forever. For years, Germany had built what seemed like an unshakable energy relationship with Russia. In 2021, about 55% of all the natural gas used in Germany came from Russia. This gas wasn't just a convenience. It was the foundation of Germany's economy, sustaining one of the most powerful industrial sectors in the world. Moreover, 34% of the oil consumed in Germany also came from Moscow, cementing a dependence that at the time seemed strategic. This energy reliance didn't come out of nowhere. It was a result of decades of economic cooperation, strengthened by the construction of pipelines like Nord Stream 1, which directly connected the two countries. These projects were presented as symbols of partnership and stability. In practice, however, they created an unbalanced relationship where Germany depended on Russia far more than the reverse. For Germany, Russian gas was crucial to maintaining its competitive industrial economy. It powered energy plants, kept factories running, and fueled processes like chemical production, one of the country's economic cornerstones. Additionally, the low cost of gas kept prices affordable for consumers, ensuring a high standard of living. As a result, severing this relationship was never considered a realistic option until the war in Ukraine changed everything. When the Russian invasion began, it became evident that this energy dependence was also a political and economic vulnerability for Germany. The country realized that it lacked control over one of the most essential resources for both its economy and its population, which relied heavily on gas to heat their homes. Furthermore, the world began to question how an industrial powerhouse like Germany allowed its energy security to become so deeply tied to a partner as volatile as Russia. When Putin's Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, Germany was placed under immediate pressure to act. As part of the West's sanctions against Moscow, the German government pledged to reduce its imports of Russian gas and oil to zero. This was a necessary decision to demonstrate solidarity with the West and economically isolate Russia. But the consequences for Germany itself were severe. Breaking away from decades of energy dependency wasn't something that could be done overnight. Germany's highly industrialized economy faced serious challenges. Energy-intensive industries, such as chemical and steel manufacturing, began to feel the impact almost immediately. Additionally, There was a sudden spike in energy prices, affecting both businesses and consumers. The once unlikely threat of a recession became a looming reality. The decision to cut energy ties also revealed internal divisions within Germany. While many supported the move as a matter of national security and alignment with the European Union and NATO, others warned about the economic cost of this choice. The reduction in Russian gas imports forced the government to seek emergency alternatives, like importing liquefied natural gas (LNG) from distant countries, which introduced new logistical and financial challenges. The war didn't just disrupt the relationship between European countries and Russia, it also changed global perceptions of energy security. Dependence on resources from a single supplier, particularly an authoritarian regime, became a major concern. For Germany, the impact went beyond the economy. It was a painful lesson in how decisions made in the past can create deep vulnerabilities in times of crisis. Russia's response to the economic sanctions imposed by Germany and other Western nations was swift and calculated. Moscow drastically cut its natural gas supplies to Germany, using its energy dominance as a geopolitical weapon. The message was clear. Russia was willing to sacrifice one of its biggest European customers to weaken Western unity and exert pressure to lift the sanctions. This retaliation strategy dealt a direct blow to the German economy. The reduction in gas supplies caused historic spikes in energy prices, affecting everything from major industries to small businesses. The situation worsened during winter as demand for heating among the German population surged. The German government was forced to implement emergency measures, such as energy rationing and the reactivation of coal-fired power plants, which had previously been retired as part of the country's energy transition efforts. The supply disruption also jeopardized the economic stability of Europe as a whole. As the continent's largest economy, Germany plays a crucial role in the European market. Any disruption to its industrial base sends ripples throughout the region. Furthermore, soaring energy costs fueled an inflationary crisis that spread to other European Union countries, amplifying the impact of Russia's actions. However, Russia's decision to cut off gas supplies didn't come without significant costs for Moscow. While it inflicted serious damage on the German economy, it also hurt Russia, which lost billions in export revenues and became further weakened by the mounting costs of its conflict with Ukraine. With the sharp reduction in Russian gas supplies, Germany was forced to accelerate its energy transition on an emergency basis. Before the war in Ukraine, the country already had ambitious plans to invest in renewable energy, but the cut in gas supplies from Russia turned that objective into an urgent necessity. The German government began seeking alternatives to diversify its energy sources and reduce its strategic vulnerability. One of the fastest measures was increasing imports of liquefied natural gas (LNG), as mentioned earlier. However, this type of gas needs to be transported by ships and requires specific infrastructure, such as regasification terminals, which Germany lacked on a large scale. Projects to construct these terminals were initiated, but their high costs and the time needed for completion made this a short-term stopgap solution. At the same time, Germany renewed its focus on renewable energy sources like solar and wind. These sectors had already been growing in the country, but now became an absolute priority. The government also reconsidered its policies on previously sidelined energy sources, including nuclear power. Some nuclear plants that were scheduled for decommissioning had their operations extended to ensure energy supply. Despite these efforts, Germany's energy transition faces significant challenges. The high cost of implementation directly impact consumers and businesses, who are already struggling with rising energy prices. Moreover, the country must balance its pursuit of energy independence with its climate commitments. The hard truth is that the energy crisis caused by dependence on Russia had a profound impact on the German economy. With reduced gas supplies and soaring energy prices, key sectors of the economy, such as manufacturing, chemicals, and steel, struggled to maintain operations. These industries, heavily reliant on cheap energy, saw their costs skyrocket, drastically reducing their global competitiveness. This increase in energy costs also had a direct effect on consumers. Inflation in Germany, which was already a global challenge due to the COVID-19 pandemic, reached historic levels. Prices for food, fuel, and electricity rose sharply, putting pressure on German households and fueling public discontent. For many, the consequences of the energy crisis became a daily concern, with higher bills and a rising cost of living. The German government was forced to act quickly to mitigate the damage. Economic aid packages were introduced, including energy subsidies and measures to ease costs for industries. Efforts were also made to negotiate contracts with new energy suppliers, though these agreements often came with a trade-off of higher prices for fuels like liquefied natural gas. However, these emergency solutions were not enough to prevent the country from teetering on the edge of a recession. The political consequences also began to surface. The government faced criticism from both the opposition and the public for failing to diversify its energy sources before the crisis. Meanwhile, protests against the rising cost of living became more frequent, highlighting the social impact of the crisis. Once seen as a modern partner of Russia, Germany was forced to completely redefine its strategic alliances. Energy dependence became a matter of national security, leading Berlin to strengthen its cooperation with the European Union and NATO to reduce future vulnerabilities. One of the most evident lessons for Germany was the need to diversify its energy sources and reduce its exposure to authoritarian regimes. This prompted the country to seek new suppliers, such as Norway, the United States, and Qatar, to replace Russian gas. Additionally, Germany began working more closely with European partners on joint projects, such as developing renewable energy infrastructure and creating more integrated energy supply networks. The crisis also pushed Germany to adopt a tougher stance against Russia. Historically, the country sought to maintain economic ties with Moscow, believing that trade could promote stability. However, the war in Ukraine demonstrated that this approach had failed. As a result, Germany supported harsh sanctions against Russia and increased its defense investments, something unthinkable before the conflict. At the same time, Germany faced a dilemma: how to maintain its economic and political leadership in Europe while dealing with the high cost of its energy transition and the internal pressure for tangible results. As Germany grappled with the challenges of severing its dependence on Russian energy, the impact of this rupture was deeply felt in Moscow as well. Losing the European market, historically the largest consumer of Russian gas and oil, deprived Russia of billions of dollars in revenue. This income, which previously financed much of Putin's government operations and war machine, became significantly scarcer, exacerbating the country's economic difficulties. To mitigate the damage, Russia began redirecting its energy exports to alternative markets, such as China and India. These countries, eager to take advantage of discounts offered by the Kremlin, increased their purchases of Russian oil and gas. However, these partnerships were not sufficient to fully offset the loss of the European market. For instance, Russia's gas export infrastructure is heavily concentrated in Europe, making it challenging to redirect supplies to other regions. Additionally, the war and sanctions plunged Russia into an economic isolation crisis. With reduced revenue from the West, the government had to rely on financial reserves accumulated over the years to cover budget deficits. But this is not a sustainable solution in the long term. The growing dependence on China, in particular, raised concerns about a potential loss of Russian autonomy to the Asian giant. The rupture with Europe also brought broader geopolitical implications. Russia, which previously wielded its energy resources as a tool of global influence, now faces a scenario in which its primary economic weapon has lost much of its effectiveness. The need for energy diversification and the pursuit of security have led Germany and other powers to reevaluate their priorities. But what is truly at stake is not just energy, it's the balance of power in the world. For Germany, the future will be defined by its ability to innovate and adapt. The transition to renewable energy, combined with new international partnerships, could position the country as a global leader in sustainability. However, the pace of this transformation will determine whether Germany can maintain its economic competitiveness or face increasing pressure from emerging powers and direct competitors. As for Russia, losing the European market forces Moscow to redefine its role in global trade. Dependence on new markets like China and India might be advantageous in the short term, but also leaves the Kremlin vulnerable, with less room to maneuver in its foreign policies. This raises questions about how long Russia can sustain its current model of energy-based geopolitics. Meanwhile, the world is heading toward a less predictable future. The energy crisis is not just an isolated event, but part of a structural shift in international relations. In a landscape where strategic dependencies are constantly questioned, true leadership will belong to those who can balance security, innovation, and global collaboration. And at the heart of this new dynamic, Germany will play a decisive role, whether as an example of resilience or as a cautionary tale about the dangers of ignoring the signs of the future. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. And now, click on the next video on your screen to keep exploring the impacts of geopolitics on the world.